Melissa had a very contagious personality. Man, it was impressive. I envy her personality. She wasn't shy. She had a very big heart. Melissa is my younger sister, but we were like best friends.
In 2011, Melissa graduates from high school, and at the time, she doesn't know what she wants to do.
Melissa begins hosting a trivia night, and the bar where it's held is a local watering hole for first responders. They befriend her and after a while convince her to finish up her schooling and become an EMT.
When she entered the paramedic program, it did seem like more of a defining moment. And she graduated from the EMT program in January of 2020. She was on the ambulance crew that transported the first COVID patient in Chicago. And it was like, this is it. This is you. This is where you belong.
I was best friends with Melissa Lamesch. Melissa and I were talking one day. It was mid-February, early March. I got a Snapchat picture of a positive pregnancy test, which had me freaking out a little bit. So Melissa and I went over all her options. Originally, Melissa was super nervous, super scared about it all, and then she became very excited.
Melissa was 27 by then. At that point in time, it was like, okay, you're meant to be a mama right now.
She finds out that she's having a baby boy, but she is very secretive when it comes to who the father is.
She just kept quiet because he didn't want to be part of the baby's life. It drove me nuts that she wouldn't tell me who it was, but she's like, I've told him he wants nothing to do with her right now. We're just gonna leave it at that. And so we left it like that, and I'm like, I was so excited.
With the baby on the way, Melissa decides to move back into her childhood home to live with her dad.
At that point, Dan and I had divorced. I kept the house. For Melissa, it was a lot easier to be closer, to get the family support.
Melissa has her share of discomfort. But about a month before Melissa's due date, she experiences an irregular heartbeat, high blood pressure, and suffers fainting spells. Afraid she is having a stroke or a heart attack, she goes to the hospital. She is told to wear a heart monitor. And for the safety of Melissa and the baby, they set a date to induce labor.
Melissa was to be induced on the 27th, which was Friday after Thanksgiving. And she was very excited about that. The morning of the 25th, I went to work because this was during COVID. Melissa was not supposed to see anybody before she went to the hospital, so she was kind of caught at home.
Unborn emergency.
There's a house smoking on South Hannah.
You see the smoke coming from the house?
Yes, and there's an alarm going off inside, but I don't think anybody's home.
I'm on scene. I've got heavy smoke showing from the roof. I've got command.
There was a house fire in Mount Morris. When the first units arrived on scene, they did locate a vehicle at the house. So there is possibly somebody inside the residence at the time. I arrived on scene and I talked to Chief Jason White with the Mount Morris Police Department. Mount Morris is a small town, and he immediately knew it was Gus's house.
I got a phone call from the police chief in Mount Morris. And he kind of panically says, "Is anybody home at your house?" Melissa should be. He said, "Are you sure?" And I said, she is. He said, "There's a fire at your house." And it's like, is it a bad fire? And he says, "Very bad." Your mind automatically goes to your worst thought. I was stopped a couple blocks from my house, and there was fire trucks blocking the road. Came running to the house. And Jeanette Bennett, who's the assistant coroner, she caught me when she saw I was coming. She said, sorry, she's gone. That's how I found out.
At the time that Melissa was pronounced deceased, the unborn child was also pronounced deceased. We noticed that the majority of the fire damage was isolated to the kitchen. Everything we saw led us to believe that the fire originated there. It could have very reasonably been an accident.
If the stove was on and somebody was cooking and hot grease or sparks or something from cooking would start a fire.
But the burners were all turned off on the stove, so it did not seem to be the cause and origin of the fire. So the investigators with the State Fire Marshal's office looked at the circuit breaker. They looked at the wiring to try to determine whether or not that led to the fire, but it did not.
One major question is why this fire had to turn deadly.
It was clear to us, based upon the amount of damage, this was a survivable fire. The main question I had is, why didn't you get out? Why didn't you crawl or walk out? There's a sliding door that leads out to the backyard, and then there was a door leading to the garage. There was no reason she shouldn't have been able to get out of the house.
Detective Ketter discovers that Melissa had a number of health issues, and so he wonders maybe there's like a simple explanation.
We learned from the family that Melissa did have a couple of health concerns during the pregnancy. She had fainted twice. She wasn't eating much, and when she wasn't able to keep food down, and she'd been tired a lot. She'd been sleeping a lot.
So investigators think maybe she fainted and fell to the floor and then died from smoke inhalation. Another thought was that possibly she fell, hit her head, and then died from some type of blunt force trauma.
When I saw the victim that night in the back of the ambulance, I was expecting to see worse injuries, but I saw nothing on her that would explain her death. There was no burns to the body that were significant in nature. The oven hood had fallen down, and it might have landed on top of her, and it might have protected her body from being damaged. We didn't know what had happened, how the fire started. I saw no signs that would suggest any type of foul play.
They send Melissa's body for an autopsy to determine her cause of death.
While investigators wait on the autopsy, they continue to gather information from family members.
I was trying to figure out what went on and what everybody knew. I talked to my neighbor, and he said before the fire had started, he had seen somebody wearing blue jeans and a hat walking up to the house. He thought it was a salesman initially, but then he saw him go straight in. That was kind of suspicious because Melissa was not supposed to see anybody before she went to the hospital.
I called my sister at 10:50 in the morning. And I'm like, you ready? She's like, yeah, I'm ready. That was the day to kind of relax and pack everything. Then there'd be Thanksgiving, and then there was the baby. I mean, we had a really nice conversation for almost 2.5 hours. And then it ended abruptly. She looks out the window, and she's like, you've got to be kidding me. Matt's here. So she said, I'll make this quick. I'll let you know what he wanted. And she hung up the phone. And I waited for a phone call that never came.
Melissa really never talked about who the father was, but she talked about that she had a guy that she was friends with benefits with, that she'd known him for a while. Melissa never really felt like he was the kind of guy that could be boyfriend material. She did feel like he was probably like a player.
It took a while for Melissa to open up about him. She did tell me that they met at trivia years ago, and they kind of had a casual relationship here and there when they were both single, and he's a paramedic firefighter. At first, she didn't even tell us his name, but I figured it out through his Facebook.
Cassie learns that the child's father is a man named Matthew Plody.
She said he wanted nothing to do with it. I said, good, let him be. I thought Melissa was better off. I mean, she was a strong woman. She could do it. And, we were there to help her. She'd still send him sonograms, and he would not respond to those messages. Like, every once in a while, he, kind of casually drop in, but it wasn't a lot. And that's why she was annoyed he just showed up that day.
Authorities believe that Matt was probably the last person to see her alive.
So we were given Matthew's name and phone number, and we reached out to him.
Later on that night, police bring in Matthew to the police station.
It's just an interview to introduce ourselves to Matthew Plody and to get his version of events of what took place that day and the history and his background between him and Melissa. They never dated, just casual sex here and there. He said when he found out that Melissa was pregnant, he was shocked.
When did she notify you that she was pregnant?
May or April.
What was the situation where you
Didn't have a good relationship.
were you guys considering abortion?
I asked her about it, and she said no.
Yeah.
Which not my choice. Very good that wasn't really on board. But today, last couple weeks or so, I wanted to be involved.
According to Plody, they had recently began talking again, which is why he went by the house that day.
He said he went inside and the two of them sat and talked and had a conversation about the upcoming induction and about possibly him being there at the hospital, and talked about him giving her money. So Matthew told us they had consensual sex 2 days before she's going to give birth. Gus told us that she's tired, she's not eating, she can't keep food down, she sleeps a lot. It didn't make sense.
So after the interview, the police let Matt go. They're suspicious, but they don't have anything to hold him on.
We still needed to figure out how the fire started and how Melissa died. Friday the 27th, the day Melissa was supposed to be induced, was the day of her autopsy. Melissa's baby was removed from her during the autopsy. And the pathologist informed us that the results of the autopsy were pending toxicology reports. So we had taken a sample of blood from Melissa to the nearest hospital to get it tested for carbon monoxide. And within 5 minutes, the results showed Melissa's carbon monoxide level was 0. So that meant she did not die of smoke inhalation. At the conclusion of the autopsy, we learned that Melissa's cause of death was strangulation. Not only was Melissa strangled to death, but she had numerous injuries on her body, signs of blunt force trauma, contusions on her upper body, on her lower body, internal injuries, and there were signs of sexual assault.
Now that police realize that it was a homicide, suspect number one is Matthew. First, they do a sexual assault kit to see if there's any DNA and any other evidence on the body. They send it off, but because it's a pandemic, it's hard to say when they're going to get the results back. It could be months, it could be a year, they don't know. And until the lab results come back, police are reluctant to make any moves on Plody, so any plans to interview him again are put on hold. Police learn that Matt is living with a woman and that he is having sexual encounters with multiple women who presumably have no idea about each other.
Finally, 6 months after the fire, police get the results of the sexual assault kit.
The reports from the sexual assault kit revealed 2 people's DNA on the vaginal swabs, Melissa and a male contributor. And there's DNA under Melissa's fingernails that came back as a male contributor as well.
DNA underneath the fingernails is sort of a telltale sign of a struggle with an attacker.
So that led us to pursue a search warrant for Matthew's DNA to either confirm or deny that it was his DNA present. That's when we started interviewing current girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, ex-hookups, and coworkers. They were all in shock because they had no idea it was a private life that nobody knew about.
After a couple months, police finally get a search warrant for Plody's DNA.
But before they take a swab of his DNA, they want to talk to him.
We were going to try to get a confession from him. Matthew was shown a photograph of his unborn child. That type of tactic usually gets a response, but we got no response out of that. There was no playing with his emotions. We showed him a photograph of Melissa taken at the second autopsy to show him the injury she sustained and how we knew she was strangled. That got no response from him. Went on for approximately 7 hours.
I think I'd like to talk to an attorney.
Once he asked for his attorney. All questioning of him ended, and the search warrant was executed by the Illinois State Police to collect his DNA. We needed to know that it was Matthew's DNA that was collected at the autopsy before we could move forward with any potential charges against him.
13 months after Melissa's death, detectives finally get their answer.
The final crime lab reports confirmed what we had suspected. It was Matthew's DNA found on the sex assault kits and underneath her fingernails, and that he was indeed the father of the child.
Hello there, Matthew. Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. We have some paperwork for you. And we'll discuss all that when we get to where we're going.
Ironically, that was my birthday, and that's a really great birthday present.
Matthew Plody is charged with 10 counts in total, including first-degree murder, intentional homicide of an unborn child, and arson.
He was found guilty on all charges.
On June 27, 2024, Plody is sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder, 60 years for intentional homicide of an unborn child, and 15 years for residential arson.